All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the August 25th, 2020 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. As we have most of the board in attendance this evening, we don't need to do a roll call to order. Hal Davis will not be joining us this evening, and I do not have any announcements, so we can go directly into item number 1, which is a layout hearing for Deer Crossing Estates and Woodland Road and possible votes. So, and I do have should I read in the acceptance plan that's in front of me?
Is Bill on?
Yes, I'm here.
Why don't you get it, yeah, why don't you get the ball rolling?
Is Tim Nealon there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So Woodland Road is part of a subdivision called Deer Crossing, and it's off of South Street, and it touches Old Farm Road. This portion of the project was approved by the planning board back in 2003, and thereafter the road was constructed. And it was actually one of the first projects in town after my department was formed. We've tested the road over the years, and they've slowly progressed with the lot releases. So from a construction perspective, they've complied with all the requirements of the planning board. There's a few punch list items that are relatively minor in nature that are outstanding. Cleaning out catch basins, there's some loaming and seeding that still has to occur. But in a nutshell, it's probably one of the better built roadways in town. So with that said, I don't know if Kim would like to add anything to that.
Yes, I'd just like to say to the board, this is the first time I've been here since we asked for the approval of Old Farm Road. We took over this subdivision back in 2006, when the previous developer had lost interest. We oversaw the repairs on Old Farm Road and continued to build up Old Farm Road out to Woodland. And at that point, when we started on Woodland from South Street. So we feel we have complied with all of the requirements for the construction. We worked closely with the planning board to see that the subdivision was completed in accordance with the plans as originally approved. So at this time, we would ask that the Board of Selectmen recommend our article be approved at town meeting to lay out Woodland Road from Station 00, which is at South Street end, to Station 32 plus 43.7, which brings it to the far corner of Old Farm Road.
And Bill, you said the planning board is in agreement with this?
The planning board has been indicated, the planning board has been working with Mr. Nealon for years, actually. I think they predicted last year, they got some work done last year, but really, we were actually trying to give him an incentive to clean up and finish that portion of Woodland Road. To basically start closing out some of our books. We've been doing that over the past number of years. In Woodland Road, it's been around since, like I said, 2003 is when it was approved. It's been constructed for a while. It's held up tremendously. There were a few issues that we walked the set last fall, John Bruno and myself, and the developer, and we identified deficiencies. They've since worked on those deficiencies. And only few things that are left are, like I said, some mowing and seeding and some chapters. What I plan on doing is, if the board agrees, we would defer to the ultimate acceptance to the planning board to make sure those few outstanding things get included prior to town meeting.
Bill, is that punch list, will that be done before town meeting?
Yes, the planning board meets on September 10th, and I expect that they'll review the project at that point and make a recommendation for town meeting. If things are not done, they would not give a positive recommendation, and I would expect that would have an impact on the layout and acceptance of the way. So just so everyone understands, the whole purpose of the layout and acceptance is that the road transitions from a private road to a public road. So the town is taking responsibility for the maintenance and upkeep of the road. So the residents out there, the taxpayers that have access and frontage on that road would now enjoy the town's services in maintaining the road from here forward.
All right, is there anybody here from the list of abutters that wants to speak on this? All right, so I'd assume that none of the abutters have any issues?
Somebody raising their hand down.
So if not, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? That is a roll call vote, I believe.
You might as well.
Yeah.
You lost.
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Cortez, aye.
Morris, aye.
Sorry, so used to doing alphabetical order.
Yeah.
I apologize.
All right, so the
What
public
could I
hearing
put in
is
that shirt?
Right.
closed, so you'd be looking also for a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen to pass this along as a warrant article?
Do you have this that Suzanne?
I do not.
Yeah. Land Council has a suggested motion, just to cover all the
I
bases
saw
and
that.
do it right, so.
So the motion would be, I move pursuant to General Law, Chapter 82, subsection 21-22, to lay out Woodland Road from South Street at Station 0 plus 0.
I didn't get to speak. My video feed cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Rebecca O'Melia. I live at 81 Old Farm Road. My house is 15 years old, and I have some issues with Woodland Road. My lot has 60 feet of frontage. 200 feet of that frontage is on Old Farm Road. Like I said, my house is 15 years old. It's been there before this road was even constructed. Today I found the deed, the original deed. The mailbox for this community is in front of my house. And it has been, I want to say, for maybe 6 years. I've had the planning board approval of this development from 2003, and it details that the mailbox is supposed to be temporary. I'm not serviced by the mailbox. I have my own mailbox on Old Farm Road. And like I said, I researched the deed today, and the developer never reserved for Woodland Road for the frontage. So I technically own the land that the mailbox has been placed upon. Like I said, my lot predates the building of this road. There was never any deed that he could appropriate part of my land for the mailbox. I've been asking for 5 years for the mailbox to be removed. I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't mentioned in the forum tonight as anything on the punch list or anything else. I read the 2003 2003 planning board approval of this project, and there's other things too that have never been included in this community that are part of that document. There's supposed to be speed limit signs. The whole street was supposed to be lined with trees. The developer, Newland, was granted an exception. If he kept existing trees, he wouldn't have to plant new trees, but there's supposed to be a canopy of trees all the way down that street. That hasn't happened. That is completely clear cut. There's also a fence there that's near the retaining pond, and they did some work on that as preliminary to turning the road over to become a public street, but the fence is damaged in several places and it's never been repaired. I've also noticed that, some of the cleanouts are all backed up and it creates water problems. There's numerous things. But my main concern is that the mailbox, there's a commitment on the part of the developer, before the road is turned over to a public way, that mailbox needs to be removed from the front property.
Is that, is that part of the
The
plan?
mailboxes.
He's got to come to the microphone. So
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you could,
could you come up to the
It's a
microphone?
cluster box. It's a cluster box for the whole street. Either you have the option when you bought the house, whether you have a post office box, the post office. Then they asked all the residents if they wanted to do that or have a cluster box put in down at the bottom of Woodland Road and Old Farm Road, and that's what we agreed to. So if they remove that cluster box, all the houses now on Woodland Road that have a key for their cluster box, they're going to have to put up mailboxes all on the street. Yeah,
And I agree, the
yeah.
approval for this development includes a provision that they're supposed, that the cluster mailbox is spoken of as temporary, which means that they were all supposed to have their own mailbox. Whatever the post office said, I don't know, but there was no provision made in the Mexican bounds and the actual planning of the land for a space for this mailbox.
The mailbox was installed by the post office. The location was selected by the post office. We have inquired of the post office about the possibility of moving it, and the response has been consistently that this is the location where we want it. It's the end of the route down Old Farm Road. I have no problem moving it, but I've been told that it's not within my purview or my authority to do so.
That's not true. I talked to the new postmaster a while ago, and he said that the better location for it would be on the throat of Woodland Road, where that's.
all right,
That's not the opinion of the current postmaster.
Mr. Chairman?
yes, go ahead.
Your opinion from when it was built like 6 years ago.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Okay, so the condition that's in the decision, and I don't want to get into all the weeds unless you want to, the condition that's in the decision really pertains to a temporary mailbox unit. And the reason we had put that there was because if we didn't have something that was acceptable to the post office at the time, we found we had an array of different styles that were put up by individual homeowners, with 5-gallon buckets all in one location. And we were trying at the time to steer clear of that. We evolved working with the post office to get to a point where we had a permanent central mailbox unit. The planning board has left that largely between the developer and the post office. And with the logic that if it's acceptable to the post office, then why should they have a problem with it? And frankly, Highway also doesn't like having the individual mailboxes because often they have conflicts with the plows.
It doesn't matter what they like. Going back to 2003, when this was approved, they were supposed to have their own mailboxes. And you can't put a mailbox it doesn't service me, and you don't own the land for it, so you can't put it in front of my house. My property has been here for 15 years, and you just said that the road was built in 2006. And my deed specifically says that they reserved the way on Old Farm Road. They did not reserve the way on Woodland Road. And the developer either willfully or accidentally put this mailbox in this location, but he did not reserve the fee for the frontage that's on Woodland Road. And I'm not part of that street. I don't see why a cluster mailbox for a different development should be in front of my house. It doesn't even make sense. Besides, irregardless of the fact that you don't own the land.
Well, I mean, understanding your concern regarding the cluster mailbox, I think that that's something outside of actually accepting the road itself. I mean, I think that's something that would need to be handled after the fact between the developer and the postmaster to determine where it is.
It's been 5 years. After the fact, there's no after.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
For clarity, I don't know if you can see my shared screen.
I can.
Okay. For clarity, the property that we're talking about is highlighted in yellow on the screen.
Okay.
It's at the intersection of Old Farm Road, which is shown in orange, and Woodland Road, which is shown as pink and blue on this sketch. The layout that's currently before the board is shown in pink. The layout in blue is going to be handled in the future. That's what we refer to as Phase 6A. The mailbox that's in question is in this blue area. So the mailbox is not before the board tonight. The layout is before the board.
Well,
What is shown?
though, because the mailbox is, yeah, it's communicated on this, that if it's not, it should be on the public way. It shouldn't be on a private part of the road. And you can launch
And
front.
it always has to at some point be on a private road, even when a road is constructed. For example, Woodland in its entirety is a private road currently, until it gets laid out and accepted. So the point of me showing this figure is to point out no portion of the layout that's before the board tonight extends to provide frontage onto Miss Amelia's property.
It doesn't matter because you don't own the land. You never
What-
reserved the
Without,
on Woodland Road. And my lot existed before that street was built. In blue was not there when my deed was created.
Right, and I think what Mr. Cundiff is saying, that the outline in blue that we can see on the screen is not before the board tonight. It's not something we're considering, ma'am.
nor is it something,
Correct.
Thank you, Bill.
No, it's already been considered in another meeting, but because
No, I think he was pretty clear in stating that that's for future appearance before the board. It has not been yet. That's my understanding. Am I correct, Bill?
You are correct.
Thank you.
well, no, but the road is being turned over into a public road now.
Not the portion of the road that deals with the mailbox, though, ma'am.
If the mailbox isn't moved to the front of the road where a public road is, then the public is going to have to pay for the cost to move it from its current location to where it's supposed to be at the front of the community.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but even if it was true, that's not before the board tonight. From what Mr. Cundiff has informed the board, the portion of the road that fronts where the mailbox is not part of the road that we may or may not accept tonight.
You can't move it to a public road later.
Right, ma'am, but it's certainly something that you could bring up or anyone else could bring up if and when, if it's still an issue, if and when we decide to accept that portion of the road.
I own the property that needs to be moved.
I understand that. I understand your position, and I think exactly as you are if I were in your shoes. But I think what we're missing here is the fact that the portion of the land that I don't want to say contains, deals with the mailbox, is not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about a different portion of the roadway. That is going to be dealt with in the future, if at all, the portion that you're concerned with.
I don't think it will be. That's my position. It needs to be moved. The location that it needs to go to will become a public way, and then you will not be able to move it without the public paying for it.
Well, I think what we'd do is we'd go through a procedure, similar to the one we're going through tonight for that portion of the public way. We just have, I understand your concern, and it may well be valid. We just haven't gotten to that portion of the road yet.
I have no objection to moving the mailboxes, but I need the cooperation of
Post
the
office.
post office.
It's probably the case that would have been done 5 years ago, Mr. Lehman.
Look, we're trying to help you out and hear where you're at with it, and, you know, to Dave's point, completely understanding that, you know, you have some frustration. Please let me finish. Please let me finish. I understand that your frustration and that you're trying to get this resolved and things that have gone over 5 years, but that's not something that's sitting in front of the Board of Selectmen tonight, nor is it something that we could act on, as it's not a posted agenda item. Legally, we couldn't do anything to help you tonight on this anyway. So, John, go ahead.
I just want to let you know that we have a new postmaster in town that's been there only for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
She's working full-time now, so I would suggest the developer go down and talk to her.
All right.
Which sounds like a reasonable
Yeah, so we...
plan to me.
And Mr. Bombara has brought to our attention, there is a new postmaster that's been in town for about 2 weeks. So perhaps that's something the developer and the postmaster can sit down at a future date
I tried
and
to
get this.
reach her a couple days ago, and she happens to be on vacation right now, according to the...
Okay.
We wonder why we're not getting it.
She's lucky to get a vacation.
Yeah.
So when she gets back from one, I'm sure that's something that you can follow up with to try and rectify Miss Amelia's concerns and issues regarding a cluster mailbox on her property.
Agreed.
I have to say too, Mr. Chairman, I haven't heard of this issue before tonight. I don't know if anyone else has.
No, I haven't.
I'm not minimizing the issue or judging it at all, but I have not heard of it before tonight.
Hold on, we have a,
We're experiencing a
have
technical
All
difficulty.
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
now would be a good time to lobby for Zoom. These things are not working.
Aye.
Well, I tell you, this
All right,
is,
we'll go with Teams. then.
Unfortunately, if people are going to speak over the board, we're going to mute that person, because the board, this is your hearing.
no, I
So
understand.
now, trying to unmute it took a little bit. Zoom works the same way.
All right, is she off of mute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to you, Rebecca?
She's still muted.
Hang on, we can't hear you.
I think she's still on mute based on what I'm seeing.
I'm sorry, what was the conclusion?
No,
The
this is-
conclusion is it's left open-ended and we'll decide later.
Well, the conclusion is that, first, this board can't act on this issue this evening, as it wasn't an agenda item, and it's outside of the scope of the public hearing that we have because of where the property delineation is. The second is we've asked the developer to please reach, I've asked the developer to please reach out to the new postmaster, which he already has, who is currently on vacation. When they do return from vacation, he will work with the new postmaster to determine a new suitable location off of your property.
What's the timeframe?
I don't know how long she's on vacation for.
Understood it'd be 2 weeks. She'd be back on the Monday, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday.
All right, so the postmaster is scheduled to return in 2 weeks, so I would expect that he would be following up with her then. And can you stay in communication with the landowner?
I will let her know of my conversations with them.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Does that work?
I guess.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing as none, I would entertain a motion at this point.
I move pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 82, Sections 21 through 22, to lay out Woodland Road from South Street at Station 0+00 to Station 32+43.70. Said layout to be contingent upon the planning board's determination that the road has been constructed pursuant to acceptable standard, such construction to be complete no later than September 12th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, the
Any
motion's been,
compliments on that?
that was
You
a
read well.
very well-read motion. It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Bone and I.
Use aye.
Cortez, aye.
Morris, aye. Okay. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, ma'am.
I have the plans here, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you want me to bring them to Suzanne's office. I don't even know if I can drop them off
Yeah,
there.
so that's the plan. You would leave the Mylars, but not take them. I'm under the strictest guidance,
Yes.
not to allow you to walk out the building with those Mylars.
With them.
Not, you can't leave with them.
Can't.
You need to leave
You
them.
have to leave them
here.
with us.
That was my question.
Yeah.
All right, you can leave them there, and we'll bring them into the office.
I'll be in big trouble, Mr. Nealon, if you leave
Okay.
here with them.
You want me to put them on the counter right over there?
Actually, if you give them to me, I'll just.
Thank you. All right, so agenda item number 2 is to interview and make appointments with possible votes for the Board of Health and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I do have, my understanding, I have 2 applicants for Board of Health, and I believe we have an open slot, one open slot, and I got an email from Suzanne that Corey Howard was considering resigning. Is Corey here?
I didn't see it.
I think her email said he couldn't be here this evening as
He
well.
couldn't be here this evening. Did we get any confirmation if he's intending to resign or not?
The opening.
No.
So, but he's up right now anyway, right?
That is his seat, yeah.
That is his seat, and then there's one open seat. That's my understanding. And we have 2 applicants. First one is Amanda Hicks. Is Amanda here? Come on up, Amanda. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
So, what perked your interest in the Board of Health?
So I'm recently in a line of work where I do waste disposal, septic install and design. My past work is in the restaurant industry. So basically, I wanted to choose a board where my expertise could be used to my best interests. I've been in Douglas for 26 years now, so I wanted to participate and contribute to the town in something I have more knowledge about.
All right. Anything to be able to make the meetings and like, no conflicting schedules or anything like that that's going on with them? All right. And Tracy Sharkey referred you or
Yes.
let you know that there was an opening on the board?
Yep.
Is there anything about the work that you currently do that would pose a conflict if you sat on the Board of Health?
No. I look at like building plans, plot plans, deliver dumpsters, nothing that would come into conflict with the board.
And you applied about a month ago?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Seems like a good candidate.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple of questions on behalf of the board?
Please do.
How do you feel about Halloween, Amanda, during the pandemic?
So, my opinion on Halloween, I mean, I understand people are social distancing to the best they can. I mean, do I think kids are gonna social distance if they see a friend? Probably not. So, I mean, obviously I want everybody to be as safe as they can. I mean, following the protocols with masks, social distancing, But do I think some people are going to do it? Honestly, I don't. But I mean, to take away Halloween from some kids, I feel like would be a little upsetting, but it's all in their best interest for their health and their safety. So, I mean, if I had a son, I have a son, but he can't go trick-or-treating yet, he's too little. But if he could, would I let him go? Probably not, just because everybody around, I don't know, would be following the same safety regulations that I would have him and myself follow.
Have you ever had an enforcement role in any other than being a parent? That's like the ultimate.
That's the ultimate enforcement role.
No, I wouldn't say I have. Just being a new parent, learning things and rules that I have to enforce would be my best experience with that.
Are you comfortable with enforcement authority being able to look at a factual record, make a decision, and stand by that decision?
Yes.
Are you, my last question, are you aware of the sweeping authority of the Board of Health?
I'm sorry?
Are you aware of the sweeping authority the Board of Health has in the current declared emergency?
Yes.
Would you be comfortable closing the schools if the facts warranted that?
Yes. As long as that's what needed to be done and it would protect our children of Douglas and everybody else, I would like to close the schools and keep everybody safe.
I thought that would be helpful.
Oh, it was a
I'll
good
ask everybody the same question.
The Halloween one was good. I didn't even think of that. All right.
I didn't either. It came up today. Somebody asked.
So does the Board of Health have the right to cancel Halloween?
They have the right to cancel a lot of things right now.
But Halloween?
Venture a guess to say no, Halloween is not really a thing.
Yeah, I don't know how you would cancel it, I'm just curious. We could put an advisory, I'm sure, but, and I'm sure the Board of Health could take a stand on it.
If we do that, I'm confiscating all of the peanut butter cups. It's a public safety thing.
That was a softball. You hit it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our other applicant is Benjamin Tesino.
No,
Behind you.
you were, snuck up on it.
I did.
What's up, Ben?
How's it going? Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. And Ben, I know your background, so it's not like it's kind of a softball to throw it out there. But
You know me.
throw it out there for the viewing public that may not have the pleasure to know you, Mr. Tesino.
So I've been here almost 2 years. Most of you guys know my grandfather. I've lived, before this I lived in Seekonk, so I'm definitely in the small town realm of things now. It's a little different that you don't have traffic lights, but I'm getting used to that. So I've been, if you guys don't know, with the EOC since the beginning. And pretty much Matt could tell you I'm one of the people that go there and get things done. My experience is a lot. I own 75 portable toilets. It's good and bad. If you're gonna find something to do with your free time, it's definitely not portable toilets. I'm not really a clean person. But I have a lot of experience with Board of Health because we have to get permits for every town we go into. I do a lot of stuff in Boston. I'm currently running I'm not running it, but I'm running the portable sanitation side for the, what's the hotel's name in Everett. They actually staffed a homeless shelter out of it. The big casino they just built across the street. Yes. So I've been pretty deep in that for a while with all the regulations that they make us do and the paperwork and, yeah, it's pretty much my experience with public health.
He's also one of the town constables.
I am. Enforcement's I'm not scared of. You can ask the couple people that I sat outside their house till they showed home. One guy said I don't give up on anything. But he avoided me for like 3 days, but yeah.
You want to throw your questions out there, Matt?
I'm just going to ask you the same question. I mean, for everybody, how do you feel about Halloween?
So as you know, we've been we've been through a bunch of stuff in town. I don't believe we should have Halloween, to be fully honest with you. Kids are, no offense, the ones that are not going to wear a mask and not social distance. I mean, you drive down the road, you see it now. And going from house to house to house to house is not a good idea. You know, I mean, we know that most people have been compliant through this, so we know that we've heard stories of people not being compliant, going to Walmart, doing all the crazy stuff people do. I just don't think it's going to be a good idea this year.
Have you ever had an enforcement role in any other job that you've had?
So other than working at GBI and running my company, I mean, I'm an Eagle Scout, so I dealt with kids. And my enforcement role was at, you know, summer camp for a week with, you know, 45 teenagers. So I'm pretty, if you throw anything at me with dealing with that, nobody really scares me, especially 45 teenagers that haven't slept and are on candy, you know? But that's pretty much my extent of it, other than being constable.
Are you aware of the Board of Health sweeping
I am.
authority and enforcement? Are you comfortable exercising that authority if circumstances warrant?
Yes, I believe that, you know, you have to do what's safe. It's not what's always, you know, you want to do or you have to do. If closing schools is closing schools to make people safe, it's what you have to do.
All right, my last question's been answered.
I didn't mean to do that, but I had to.
The board thanks you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
So
Thank you.
the question on the table is Corey Howard, I suppose, as to whether we reappoint him and appoint one of our other two candidates. And he's an incumbent.
I have some reservations on Corey, like if he's got questions, I don't want to, you know, miss out on one good candidate for somebody that may or may not be considering resignation for whatever reason they may or may not have.
I don't think the reasons are as important as, you know, we need to know his future plans. He's there now. Maybe it's me, I think it'd be presumptuous of the board to assume he's going to resign and appoint somebody in his stead when he hasn't left yet.
My recommendation is to appoint one tonight and continue it for, you know, Corey to have an opportunity to weigh in. I mean,
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
I'll be the guy out on the limb. I don't necessarily agree. I'm not pleased with the current Board of Health and seeing an opportunity to start moving some people out of there in light of recent events. I think this is as good a time as any. So, like, we just came through a pandemic and they proved to be drastically ineffective.
it's a little rich.
No, it's dead honest. If you're given an order from the state and you don't do it because you're afraid to do it, you shouldn't be there.
Well,
See, for me, he couldn't be here this evening. I don't know what his reasons are, and I guess he's considering resigning. But if he doesn't decide to resign, I'd like to give him the opportunity to speak to those concerns before we make a decision to replace him or not.
That's well said. I agree.
And I don't know him from Adam, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I hate to indulge myself, but may I?
Please.
Corey was the health agent for the town, and so I worked with him on some things. He's a really solid public servant, and
He's a really what?
solid public
Okay.
servant, and I would really like to recommend to you that he be given the opportunity to make up his mind. He has heard these candidates, and that might help make his decision for him, whether he's giving his seat up to somebody who has the same ideas. In my time working with Corey, there were times when he had to go and close, you know, had to evict someone from a house, and he didn't shrink from the responsibility. He did the job. But like I said, I mean, he served the town very well for a long time, and you're going to meet again next week. It's not like, you know, this is going to drag on for months and you won't have an opportunity to look at it.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, do we appoint for the one open position? I think we've got two good candidates.
yep.
I don't know how we choose between the two of them.
Is it Amanda? Yeah, forgive me, I had it today, and it's probably sitting on my, Mr. Selectman Hughes took it. My understanding is you applied before Ben,
Yes.
right? And certainly Ben, both you guys very qualified, but for the time being, I would make that recommendation. You appoint Amanda to the Board of Health position ending, or with the term ending in 2022, and to hold off on the second opening until such time as we can get all the information we need from our volunteers who, really make this place run.
I'll second your motion, Tim.
That was a lengthy motion.
That was very good, though.
It was good.
Yeah.
Didn't have the usual bone and terseness, though.
Yeah.
That's coming.
Motion's been made and seconded. The only discussion that I will add is I don't necessarily go to the first person that applied as my criteria as to my leading candidate. With that being said, motion's been made and seconded. That's the only discussion I have to offer, so all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay. You get the job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean we won't reconsider your bid.
I understand. Yeah.
All right, brings us to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I do not have any additional applications. Oh, yes, I do.
I just have one.
Ron Forget.
Right.
Is Ron in attendance this evening?
There he is.
Come on up, Ron.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening, Ron.
Hi.
So, Ron, what makes you want to get onto the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Basically to try to help people work through their problems a little bit easier and, according to the rules and regulations, but that would be the basic reason.
So, I guess,
Yeah.
If I could expound on that a little bit,
yeah.
just to give you some of the history that I was on the first Industrial Development Commission for the town, way back, right? The next situation was, spent 15 years on the school committee, 12 as the chairman. Then I went to one other one. It'll come to me. And spent, it was many years on that board. And so kind of know the workings of all the different boards and what basically you can do, what you can't do, and how that works with helping people to get, to work out their problems.
So I guess I'm just going to address the elephant in the room, Ron. So,
Yep.
Zoning Board of Appeals has regulatory authority, I guess, and enforcement authority that's
Yeah.
sitting there.
Yeah,
And it's hard for me to not just come out and say, like, you own Breezy Acres.
I don't own Breezy
Or
Acres.
you don't own.
Breezy Acres has been turned over to my son.
To your
I have
son.
Nothing to do with Breezy Acres, no.
So,
I'm on, that property is on my grandfather's property. That's how long we've been in Douglas.
so I guess the question that I would have is, you understand the things that are going on Board of Health-wise and the things that came down the state for your son's business. If a zoning issue came up pertaining to Breezy Acres, would you be able to step up and enforce that?
He wouldn't be able to.
He would be
He would
able
have to
no.
recuse himself.
That'd be a violation of the ethics laws, I believe, just because of your familial relation with your son.
Oh, okay.
I would think.
Yeah, it would be.
Or even kind of weigh in on it? Like, I mean, that's kind of where
I don't
I
think
sit
he
with
could
it.
even weigh in on it.
It's hard for me to offer that kind of authority to where it's like, it's your son's business, you're his dad. I would have figured that you would have like, hey, comply. So I guess it's difficult for me to get my head around it, that's all. Where I have kind of a little bit of a problem
Just so the folks at home know, and so that I'm clear, because quite frankly, I'm not, there's one open alternate position on the ZBA, correct?
Correct.
In Mr. Forget, are there any other applicants other than he?
No, there are not.
Okay.
Would you be interested in that alternate position?
Yes.
All right, well, I think,
I just wanted to get all the basics out, that's all.
Yeah, because your application said that you were applying for a full membership.
Correct.
So that's where the confusion came
Well,
in.
I kind of figured if it was an alternate, I'd accept that, yeah.
in the past, that's what we had done. The ZBA would acclimate, a ZBA member would start at the alternate or whatever position we call it, and you would kind of move up as
No, that
there was
alternate
turnover.
position, that would be, is that like we used to do with someone else didn't show up or
Right.
something, you sit in?
Yep.
And I've been amazed at how often alternate people, alternate members impact the board itself. It's not a passive thing, and maybe the existing members can explain, but
Yeah.
that it's an impactful post, for sure.
Mr. Bombara?
Yeah, Mr. Fodger probably doesn't realize he still can participate in questions and answers when he is at a meeting. Now, we only have, if all 5 people are there, he has the right, we have the right to vote, but he can still give his opinion. He's not going to be, he can still voice his opinion on anything.
Okay.
So let that be clear. So-
Thank you.
You're the chairman of the ZBA. What are your thoughts on it, Mr. Heaney?
No, I welcome Mr. Fortune on as an alternate. And I disagree with Myra a little bit. He would be able to participate in all the conversations, but if it was family, he would have to recuse himself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But he could participate in every hearing and ask whatever questions he would like, and if the full board was there, he just wouldn't have the ability to vote.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
How you doing?
Good. Thoughts, comments, points of clarification?
All the same comments as they just said. All I'd be doing is repeating them.
All right. But it's always nice to hear it from you, Mike.
No problem. I live right next door to you, just walk over.
I will.
So based on that, I see no reason not to reappoint the 2 members, Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Heaney, to their seats on the zoning board, and to appoint Mr. Forget as an alternate, with the term ending when, Tim?
You did really well. You have to say 2023 for Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Heaney, and 2022 for the alternate position.
I
Great.
think he has to start over.
No, what Tim says. I will add that to my motion.
I will second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank
You're all
you very
set.
much.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Discussion on the MMA support of the police bill and possible votes.
Well, in the interest of moving things along, I will hand to our town administrator my draft in the hopes that he can tighten it up, put his spin on it, and get it to the board for signature.
Did we just skip over assigned motions?
Oh, we did. I'm going to back up to that one. Let's get this out of the way.
Okay, I just,
So we're not acting on that. You want him to tidy it up, make it cleaner, and represent?
Yeah, it could go any number of ways, and I frankly got swamped with some other stuff, so that has kind of been pushed to the side.
That work for you, Matt?
I'm reading the letter. What's that?
He'd asked if you could go through, clean it up, and get it represented to us
It needs-
next
I heard
week.
that.
Yeah, it needs an ending, that's all.
All right.
Needs an ending.
Yeah.
Oh, I see the question mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, there's several questions. Okay.
Where it ends, you know? What do we want? That's the question. I tried to get that out of us last week, but it didn't come, so I wasn't gonna speak.
Do we want to have a discussion on that, what we want? Because I don't think for,
Well, yeah, if we want to give,
What's up?
Just want to thank the board for the reappointment.
okay, thanks, Mike.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Keep up the good work.
Discuss, Leah.
I guess, from my point of view, the broad answer to that would be to make sure that our voice is heard at the MMA, and that we're unhappy that they took, action. And it's not like just Douglas was left off the list. Look at the list of all the communities, and I think they were all left off. I'd like to see them at least come up with some kind of policy that this doesn't happen again. They're not going to put forth an opinion that purports to represent municipalities when we haven't even been discussed. And I guess we could talk about asking them to withdraw support of the bill. As we've discussed before, when you so eloquently put it, you wound me up on the issue.
Yes.
It's a bill that has the potential to cost our town and a lot of other towns a lot of money. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them to withdraw their support based on that alone.
I think that might be the answer, right?
Is that one of the question marks or all of them?
I don't know if that made that. It may have made it. But yeah, I mean, ultimately to relay our objection and to urge a withdrawal, it's probably as productive a letter as we can get, short of really amping things up to some to rhetoric that we may or may not have the strength to utter.
Right.
Is that all? Is that clear? That help?
The town administrator has a thinking cap on, I can tell just by the...
No, I like sending letters like this, so.
Yeah.
I can reaffirm that.
Why say clean your room when you can say so many other things and then finish with clean your room?
But does the room get cleaned?
No. Mr. Chairman, thanks to the board for the guidance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's assign some motions. First one that I see that's Board of Selectmen's purview is number 7, which is the FY21 PEG access and cable receipts reserved for appropriation.
I'm looking around and, oh, Mr. Davis doesn't appear to be here.
No, he doesn't.
You're going to do Hal dirty like that? All right.
Equality is a thing, Mr. Chairman. And I'm looking right at Mr. Bonin when I say that. He has been the victim a number of times of this.
But he loves being...
I don't think he particularly complains, no.
No, because what we've assigned him to do is just his passion.
Especially when it's regional issues, right? Then his two passions mesh together almost perfectly.
All right.
Tim, how did this end up being about you again?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who wants number 8?
I know it's out of love, I do.
Recurring business.
I'll take that.
Personnel bylaw classification and update. I'll take that one. 11, approve expenditure post office interior exterior painting.
I'll take it.
Sale of real land, 17.7 acres of land between Northwest Main and Gilboa Streets.
I would like that one.
I think you would.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I'd pick it up.
I know.
Cedar Street taking.
I haven't done one. Does need 2/3 majority vote. I think I could probably muster that.
You can
handle
rock
that,
the
Tim.
house with that one, Tim. You've got that. 17, which is Preservation Park Highway Bonds appropriation.
I'd be happy to take that.
Grant of easement for National Grid.
I'll take that.
Street acceptance Woodland Road. I'll take that one. Amend the general bylaw number of marijuana licenses. Want me to take that one too?
Yeah, go for
It
it.
was my dumb idea, huh?
Yeah, it was.
Solar Farm Pilot, BWC Witten Reservoir LLC.
I'll take it.
You want that one, Dave?
I
I think want is a strong term, but I'd be happy to do it.
don't think Tim only has one.
I think Tim should take that one, the Solar Farm Pilot. Would you be willing to do?
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
All right, and then 22, if it actually shows up, most likely that's going to be passed over. That's the TIF.
That's not going nowhere.
All right, so we won't even assign that one. That's got him.
So see, we didn't pick on Hal at all.
No.
Not very much.
No, he's unscathed in that.
it's like you sit back and think about it, though. Hal's never, like, pig-piled on any of these, like, oh, they're not here, let's throw stuff at them.
Oh, yeah.
I don't recall him doing that.
I think he has. It's a tradition, and I'm all about tradition.
Yeah, he doesn't back down, yeah.
Yeah. He has the dry way of putting it, but.
I stand corrected. I was giving Hal more credit than I should have on that thing. I don't have any updates on the food service program investigation, other than a subpoena was issued. I don't think it's been answered as of yet. So I think that needs to be escalated through town council to kind of force an answer out of them, or at least provide the data that was requested.
Just a point.
Mr. Chairman, how are you today?
Good.
Good. Our school council issued a reply to town council, I believe Wednesday of last week, if not Thursday of last week. The email was sent to town council in response to the request. So your council has had that email since the middle to end of last week.
All right, thank you, Paul. I wasn't aware of that.
You're welcome.
On this matter,
I came to answer the question.
on this matter, I don't know if it needs to be an agenda item every single week. We've had this thing for the past month and a half, and it's been a continuing. I would just prefer to get an update on the audit when that happens, and not discuss it publicly any further. It's troubling to me that the relationship between this town and the school is what it's become, based off of good intentions. I love the idea that we're feeding the community in a time of uncertainty and crisis, but it is certainly not worth the disruption in the school relationship that I'm seeing, and frankly causes me great concern. I'm not saying don't do the investigation. I'm saying let's not talk about it every week.
Yeah, if there's nothing new to add, I don't see why you would.
Yeah, if I don't have any updates, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'll leave it as a
just-
placeholder, and if then there's nothing to be provided there, it just won't be discussed, I'll pass it over. But I'll leave it as a bookmark that's on there, just in case something does start coming up from it. That work?
I'm okay with that. Are you, Tim?
But it still stays on the agenda, right? Until there's, I mean, we were promised binders and binders of things, and we haven't seen anything, and now I'm hearing Rich isn't responding to the school council, and yet the school's getting beat up a little bit, before that was even, made aware of us. I just don't see it necessary.
Mr. Town Administrator, would it be advisable to schedule an executive session meeting with town council over this?
To discuss at least why we don't know that the schools responded. I mean, I
That was a
don't know.
surprise, I think, all of us,
And
right?
so nobody wants to come to a meeting and sit here and be blindsided due to a lack of communication. So you are the client. He needs to be responsive and update you and tell you what's going on. I don't know what the contents of that response, I'm not going to speculate. So I don't know if it was cooperative or uncooperative. We don't know unless Rich tells us.
No, and I wouldn't want to speculate on it anyway, because there may be underlying factors that we don't know about, and I wouldn't want to talk about it if there's a written response.
It may be as innocuous as I'm going on vacation and I'll circle back.
Exactly, right.
But what's a little troubling is that if the superintendent wasn't here,
We wouldn't
to
know.
clarify that, we would just assume, to Tim's point, because it is on the agenda, that they haven't responded, which just continues to make the school look bad. So I would have to agree with Tim, not to necessarily leave it as a placeholder, but only put it there when we know for certain that we have something to discuss.
My biggest concern with that is that we've all had a history of when something's not sitting there staring directly in front of you, we tend to forget about it.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be
And this
forgetting
is-
about this, though.
This is a pretty...
This isn't something we'll forget about.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Kevin.
certain, Kevin, you're on.
Well, I won't, I can assure you, I won't let anybody
No,
forget about
but typically, we don't keep things a rolling item on the,
At minimum,
on the
just put it
agenda.
on the future agenda item,
yeah.
right?
Just
Without
keep
a
it
date.
there, and that reminds us that at
Well,
some point when you have an update.
This is an internal work in progress every week or every 2 weeks, depending how often you meet. It can be on there in case something comes, but when it's posted, if there's nothing that has arrived yet, it can be taken off. But it's.
So you're
it's
saying if you
easier
find
for-
out something on Monday,
Exactly, but
discuss
if we
it.
leave it on the draft agenda, it's
Yeah.
always there, so you don't make the mistake of having something to talk about and failing to put it on the agenda. This is internal, this is like way down in the weeds, but if Suzanne leaves it on the draft and then takes it off if there's nothing new,
That's fine.
because anything new coming at this point, you're gonna need more than Wednesday, or the Friday and the Monday before the meeting to absorb the response to this subpoena, because it's voluminous. One would think if they respond to it that way, as it was drafted.
Would you like me to, I'm moderately annoyed that I'm finding out that, from Paul, that there was a response sent to our town council without us being notified. If you'd like, I can address that with Attorney Bowen, or would you feel better doing it yourself?
Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen appoints town council. You are the client.
All right.
So let's look for an executive session next week with him in person for the purposes of this, we'll call it for personnel.
Right. I mean, is that,
You have to state a purpose that's exempt under the open meeting.
that's what I was going to ask. What purpose best fills what we want to do
Well,
here?
actually, I think an investigation
That's what I
is a
thought.
verbatim exemption.
Yeah, I think so,
Right.
too.
Okay.
I think all of us probably have some more questions in regards to the status and what our possible avenues might be and things like that.
Yeah, I certainly do.
All right. So we'll have that as an executive session next week.
Ideally with everyone here. I don't know if we can ask Hal to N95 it and come visit us, but I think,
That's a verb now?
yeah, I might just turn that into a verb.
I think we could probably persuade Hal to come in person,
I
because he
think
did
that's-
come to the
We'll see where we are.
other meetings. Yeah, I can't speculate. Next week, everything could blow up, so. All right, so we'll do that. And this will stay on the draft and then removed with no info. Okay. Approved minutes and possible votes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we would approve the meeting minutes of August 18th, 2020.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Your report, Mr. Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, you're having approved the minutes, and maybe one of the last sets of minutes, with the possible exception of tonight's meeting, that will be drafted by Mary Wright, who's our recording secretary and works for many of our boards and committees. She's going back to school and needs time, so she's resigning her position as recording secretary. She's obviously done the job the whole 3 years I've been here. I think she does an exceptionally good job.
I agree.
She is paid by the hour. She is extremely efficient. Her line items in the various little budgets always come in under. And the good news is, nobody in Douglas fights about minutes. You have no idea how drudgery it is to work for a town where the taking of minutes is controversial. She has the right level of detail and yet does not attempt to be a stenographer and record everything verbatim or call anybody out or embarrass anybody after the fact for something that they may have said in the heat of passion. So she's done a fabulous job. We did interviews this past week and made an offer to a very qualified person who is already a recording secretary for another town nearby. We don't often cross-pollinate with Connecticut, but in this case, she's been taking notes for a couple of committees in Thompson for a while, and has a wicked Brockton accent, which we don't often speak to our recording secretary, but it was charming. But I think she's the right fit, because we had the opportunity to talk to her about level of detail and review. She had gone to the website and reviewed the minutes and felt comfortable with the style that was used. So I think we got a good, smooth transition, but that'll start after September 1.
I was going to ask you, so Mary will do this meeting?
Probably.
So she will hear this?
Yes.
Well, I will say, I agree with you in regards to the minutes that are taken. It is very rare that something is out of whack, if at all. I don't know in my time on this board I've actually seen that, but one thing that a mark that I did put in this town that I'm particularly proud of in the interest of transparency and open government is I lobbied for the timestamp to be put on the minutes. And at the time, the wheels and the machinations of government, they objected to that. And Mary, to her credit, said, no, this is very easy what he's proposing. And, I think the town's better for it, and I certainly hope the new minute taker will follow Mary's lead and example. So thank you, Mary, for your time and service to the town.
May I? As someone who used to be a union secretary in another life and took voluminous minutes of union meetings, some of which became a little heated here and there, I recognize her excellent work and her excellent job. I reiterate everything that's been said before this, but the only thing is, Mary, I know you're listening to this. This part of this about you goes in the minutes, okay? Nothing further.
I just concur. We never have any discussions about minutes.
No.
So that says something. And I'll pat Tim on the back, too, for his suggestion with the timestamp.
It's very kind of you. I guess I was looking for a pat on the back. It'll be real.
Actually, it makes things way easier.
Doesn't it? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's,
no, actually, it was an excellent idea,
I
so
mean-
that pat was a serious pat.
and I don't know if other municipalities do it, but I think all entities probably should that are under the scope of public access. Anyway.
So, quick update on COVID. Nothing's troubling until it's significant, right? We are not headed in the right direction, but we're not going anywhere fast. So I don't want anybody to be overly concerned, but after several weeks of having 0 cases in town, we've had a couple of weeks where we've had cases, active cases reported. In some cases, towards the end of the incubation period, so the remaining isolation was very brief. So we were aware of the case and it closed 3 or 4 days after. So right now, as far as I know, at the end of the day today, we'll have only 1 active case remaining. Well, I say a little bit troubling because the cases we've been getting have been with very young people. So as we contemplate the return or a partial return to school, I don't want to be a victim of the fickle nature of the media. So for the longest time, they reported that kids weren't getting this, maybe to make us all feel better. And now all of a sudden, we're going back to school, and there's some uncertainty about the decision. So now we're getting a lot more reportage based on the same data that the kids are, in fact, vectors, and there is going to be cause for concern. But we're keeping a very close watch on it. The state's threshold for being concerned about Douglas would be if we had more than 5 active cases in town.
If we had more than how many?
5.
5.
And we're at
1 right
1,
now,
2.
but we've had no more than 2 at any given time, but there's been this slow drip of 1, 2 a week.
Do you know the age of the current
18.
18?
So we're, like I say, we're watching it carefully. Agnieszka does a fabulous job of contact tracing and staying in touch with people. So I'm confident that she's getting all the information she needs to do her job. Going back to the schools, I've ordered all of the PPE I feel comfortable ordering. There are some items which are extremely expensive compared to others. And that being the case, what I'd like to do is give them enough to go for 4 or 5 weeks on the N95 masks and the isolation gowns in particular, and see how their usage pattern plays out. I've been critical of the schools because, to me, inventory management is a basic, core, essential financial function. But rather than just throw rocks, what I've done is I've built an inventory management system for PPE and implemented it. So we have a picture of everything. We have a stock room with a key, and nothing will be released unless it's signed out. And we'll monitor the use. We'll also monitor day-to-day changes in price and availability. Last week, you couldn't get blue nitrile gloves to save your life, and if you could, they were $20-something a box because the main supplier wasn't available. This week, the main supplier found themselves a supply, and they're back to $14.99 a box. So if you jumped at one point because you had to, you spent more than you needed to. So we will be very opportunistic if the school is burning through the stuff at the pace that they anticipated. The inventory management system is set to flag when you reach the level where you need to reorder, given the time it takes to fulfill the order. Just so everybody is clear about this, the Operational Services Division negotiates statewide contracts that are best value contracts. They are not best price. They are best value. They represent a range of contract terms, including discounts and other factors, not just the price of the individual item. Just because a vendor is on the statewide contract list does not mean it is a quote-unquote approved vendor. There is no such thing. And when you go through the procurement training for the state, you're made to understand that you are well within your rights to compare prices from statewide contracts versus non-statewide contracts, provided that anybody you consider is responsible and responsive. So that's what, right now, if you want N95 masks that are approved by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, unless you have a source of your own, you buy them from Amazon. They're the only ones who have them. But because they're NIOSH certified and the price was competitive, that was the place to go for that one item. Everything, almost everything else either came from WB Mason or Safeware, which is an industrial company that sells safeties. So the way I want this to work is if somebody wants something, they need to contact me. Adam and I have the keys. We'll release the stuff. We'll keep track of it. We'll replenish it as needed. So that's where we are. The inventory management system, if it works, it was free. All right, so everybody understands. The app, just download it on your phone or your computer. It's free. It's an open platform. The PPE itself is being purchased with CARES Act funds that are under the control of the municipality, not the school district. So our source of authority for buying and maintaining the supply is the fact that we signed the paperwork to get paid for it. So that's where we are with PPE. Last thing I would raise is e-permitting. We signed the contract today to finally implement this necessary step into the modern world. If there's any chance of being locked down, closed down, part-time officials, all of the things that get in the way of people doing business, when you're on a website and people can file their applications and do their paperwork and do some research on that permitting process 24/7 as long as the website's up. In my background, I worked for a division of our consulting firm that was called Activities, Processes, and Systems. It was meant to change the way companies work internally so that they'd be more efficient, more cost-efficient, more effort-efficient. So we will go through every single process we have. We are not just doing the building office. We're doing all the land use offices. Building, zoning, planning, and Concom will all be on the e-permitting platform. They all have to sign off on each other's work. They all need visibility into each other's applications. But most importantly, those processes have been established for a very long time. They may or may not be efficient, but once you take into account an electronic platform where people can see things as they're filed, there's no reason to accept anything that's not complete and move it into the process. There also needs to be a place where, oh, gee, I want to call town hall to figure out what I was supposed to file, I forgot. Now, you just open your account, you look at your punch list, oh yeah, I was supposed to get that thing notarized, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We probably, the contract says we will go live no later than January 1st, but our goal around here is to try to get done before Thanksgiving if possible. And if that slips, certainly early December. Again, because this is an attempt to make government accessible to people during the pandemic, the installation work that goes to the software will be paid for out of CARES Act funds. So roughly $18,000 will not come from the people. The $20,000 a year annual licensing fee will be in the budget going forward. The goal is to save more than that in terms of the amount of time and compensated time that people spend getting these processes to work. My personal view is we are not customer-friendly. It takes way too long to do things. If the building official is extremely busy, for instance, this week, the guy's doing like 15, 16 inspections a day just to keep up with his workload. It's a very busy office. Every single thing we can do to make things easier for everybody involved is going to make everybody happier. So there are a lot of, I don't want to call them bells and whistles. There's things that are very easy to do with modern technology. So if I'm a contractor, I have a contractor's license. When I apply for a permit in Douglas, I will enter my contractor license, and an awful lot of my information will self-populate into my application. So I can just skip to the good stuff and move on. There are any number of features like that. I'm excited about it. It took a while to negotiate this contract. The vendor's used to dealing with towns that don't have a very astute town accountant, but we do. So we won't be paying for anything until it's done. So there are milestones established. But I think, if you want to see how these things work, you can look at Needham, you can look at Webster, because that's the system that we're getting. We're just somewhat more broadly covering it, as I mentioned. That is all I have for you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any old business?
Oh, to bring it up or not, I'm gonna, because I'll tell you, the past week, 2 weeks or so has weighed on me. And that's the vote that this board, and I'm cognizant, I've been on this board for 10 years and I'm a team player. I'm cognizant of the fact this board voted 5-0, myself included, as well as the Finance Committee, I believe, the night after. But in having a week or so to think about it, the idea that this board would vote to add another body onto the employment rules when we promised the townspeople that we weren't going to do that is not sitting well with me. It's just, I'm not sleeping, I'll tell you. I think it's not transparent, and I have some concerns. So I'm be interested in what is the process at town meeting for us to, as a town, at town meeting, consider that specific item. Is it an amendment to take the compensation schedule, withdraw that?
So I did inquire of town council, because I think we are all unified in the idea that if the people vote, then there shouldn't be any sort of legal loophole or trick or oversight that goes into the way the motion is made in order to establish what it is you want to do. If you don't want the position, you would take it out of the compensation table. If you take it out of the table and you also reduce the budget by the amount of money that was put in to fund it, you kind of closed all the doors. But as far as Mr. Mazur is concerned, if you take it out of the table, it doesn't exist. It can't be filled.
Okay.
If you leave it in the table, but you cut the budget, the chief of department can still appoint the position and make his budget work within the bottom line that he's given for compensation of employees.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the consensus of both Labor Council and General Council.
Okay. And I don't even know if I necessarily cast judgment on the position itself and the need, more of the process in which we took that up at the 11th hour. It's just, our debate, I mean, I started with call firefighters, and I was going to naturally move to paramedics, and why not bring in more bodies and let chief run the department as necessary. But then, Finance Committee took over, and before we know it, it's late, and I lost track of where we were and what we were doing. So I think whether I bring that up or someone at town meeting brings that up, I can expect, the town moderator should expect that is something that the townspeople will pick up.
Well, I would hope that they would have paid close attention to the presentation that had come from the fire chief as it pertained to the position. So the question on the call department was addressed and answered, is that the expertise isn't there.
No, I understand that, but, right.
And the other portion that we have to really take into consideration is that we were looking at not adding any additional positions at a deeper burden to the taxpayer. This position will fund itself. The amount of calls that we have that go to mutual aid that is lost revenue, we won't lose because we have the second paramedic and the second ambulance in-house and able to respond. And I mean, we got socked in the nose with that just the other day. We had somebody at the municipal center that had to get called out by Uxbridge because our one ambulance was out of town, and it was at 5 o'clock, which the assistant chief position that he's looking to do, we could have staffed that second ambulance very quickly and responded internally. There's anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 that we just missed out on to a town next door. And it really doesn't look good to see Uxbridge coming to our municipal center to pick up an injury, ever. Not when we have the apparatus and we have the expertise and we're just missing a body.
Well, maybe the town will figure out what
Yeah.
they want to do.
And I think that makes sense, and if we're losing out on money, we need to figure out a way to capture that. And if the position pays for itself,
in my mind,
that's great. But I think, what Tim's asking is for transparency, just so that people are all on the same page.
Agreed.
Which I can't argue with.
And the bottom line for me is it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with the town's growing and it's getting bigger. And within the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to have to field a second ambulance. We have no choice to it. It was proven time over time and time again during the whole COVID pandemic that happened. That second ambulance was running a lot. And we're also going to need to start looking at how many patrol officers we have currently sitting on the streets, because we're understaffed and that leaves the town vulnerable. And I mean, I understand we're fiscal conservatives and things like that, but there comes a point in time that if you understand what a fiscal conservative is, they don't have a problem spending money, they have a problem wasting it. Spend it wisely. And public safety, sorry, that's a wise expenditure of money. Always has been.
And I don't disagree with that at all, Tim. I think some of the...
I'm Kevin, he's Tim.
Oh, Tim. Kevin. See, it's been so long since I've been here.
I'm Dave, by the way.
Nice to meet you, Dave. I think you're right. It makes sense to spend money on public safety, and I think this board in the past has certainly supported that. Some of the concerns, questions that I've heard over the last week or so is, yeah, we support spending money, but I don't quite understand why it's that position, why it's not a different body or two other bodies. Is the department really big enough to support a need? An assistant chief? Those are the concerns that are being brought to me.
Absolutely.
It's not that people are against funding public safety. They want to make sure they're funding it in the most cost-effective way. To get the biggest bang for the buck.
And I don't know, when is September 12th? Maybe next meeting, have the chief come in and further discuss and advocate for it. I'd like to find out why we don't just drop 2 paramedics in it and make more money. What's that? Who? Oh, we will talk to him whenever, that's okay. That's all. I think a further discussion, the way you've made the case there, Kevin, I would probably say you'll garner the support you need to pass it, but I think the townspeople need to take that up on their own as a standalone, because I read briefly the Finance Committee report, and there was no reference to it. And the last thing I want me or this board to do is get crucified for stuffing something in that doesn't get wholly addressed.
I share your concern with, adding another FTE.
Yes.
To use a term, full-time equivalent position, or full-time employment, whatever term you wish to use. And I know that we talked about not adding them at the time of the override a little ways back, but I think a lot of things have changed since then. And hopefully, the people of this town elected us for our ability to lead. At least I hope so, and no other criteria. Having said that, if there's a need, I think we need to fill it. I think there's been transparency, through this meeting. I don't have any problem with it going before town meeting. I've always thought, I'm not sure who said it, we are understaffed on the public safety side, and that comes from somebody who used to do that. We're understaffed greatly, and we're borrowing time. And sooner or later, something's going to happen on any kind of public safety, and we're not going to be able to meet it just by the lack of trained personnel that we have. And then at that point, there'll be an outcry of, why are we so short-staffed? Well, because we made more or less a commitment several years ago that we wouldn't hire anyone. I guess it's a question of priorities. I think the case has been made And I haven't heard anything that would make me change my mind. I certainly don't have any problem with transparency at this level or at town meeting or anywhere else. I think the case has been made. We're talking about, and even the financials of it being able to generate the salary through increased ambulance revenues. If you're in need of an ambulance for something other than a minor injury, you're really not going to care. You just want that ambulance there right away. And unfortunately, in probably everybody's lifespan, there's going to be one time, hopefully only one time, hopefully 0 times, where they're laying there in a serious condition saying, "Gee, I hope that ambulance gets here quickly. I hope somebody trained gets here quickly to take care of me." And I just don't think it's an old corny saying, you can't put a price tag on public safety, right? But I think that's probably the town's core value and the town's core mission is to provide good public safety. We are growing. We're dealing with COVID. We heard the town administrator's report on that. We're dealing with all the other corollary effects of the lockdowns and all the rest of that. So I would think the public safety people, police, fire, EMS, they all have a lot more on their plate than they did a year ago at this time. They're going to have a higher level of calls. They're going to have different kind of calls. I talked to Chief Vincent offline about the amount of, BS they have to go through on every call to basically protect the members of the department against being infected or reinfected with the COVID. So everything's at a higher level. There's more pressure on all those men and women right now. And I think if we can put a position in that essentially pays for itself, we hope that it does. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer. But if there is concern, I haven't heard any myself, but if there is concern, by all means, let's let town meeting address it.
Well said, Dave.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, if I may make,
No, I would just reiterate that it was this board that took the fire department from what it was to where it is now, and 24/7.
Absolutely.
And the town has always valued, the work of our public safety folks. This is just a discussion, I think, that needs to be.
I understand your concern completely.
I just want to try to lay out the procedural aspect of this, the timing. Why did it come towards the end of a delayed budget process? And we would have been here anyway, so if the budget had passed in May, we would have been going to November special town meeting to ask for this. Because whether it's convenient or inconvenient, life has a way of, pointing you in a direction or making a case for a certain action to be taken regardless of what else is going on in the world around you. And that's where we found ourselves. We found ourselves in this room, actually, contemplating, well, we got 2 or 3 open positions. We're out recruiting. What other things really need to be done? What's going on in the world around us in terms of the pandemic and other things, and how can we best assemble a team that has both the breadth and depth of skills to deliver the same level of service or slightly better than we're doing right now. We had an extremely strong pool of applicants just come through here to fill those vacancies, and the vacancies have been filled. So all the offers have been made and accepted, and it's a really great talent pool. But we no longer live in a world where everybody has all the pieces. So they might be a paramedic, but they don't have firefighter 1 and 2. They might have 1 and 2, but they're a basic or just a first responder on some levels. So you're working with people to skill up while you're still trying to deliver the same level of service. A fire chief's time, any public safety chief's time, I think is like a water balloon. You squish it one side and it comes out. So if you take all the time and you compress it into training and staffing up your group with the skills that they need, there are other things that need to be done. You're still the local fire marshal. You still have not only to run the ambulance and bill for it, but you have to collect on the receivable, which is rather large, frankly. There are emergency management planning efforts that need to be done. So when I started, I was willing to go along with this because I think I've established my record as your employee that I'm as fiscally conservative as they come. I've been trying to save money every single possible way we can. But I got persuaded on this because I've also been involved in building teams, whether it's sports or organizational development, some of the world's biggest companies. And sometimes when you see the talent there, you have to make a decision that makes you better. and take your lumps if you're going to take some lumps for making that decision, because while we always try to be principled as town managers and administrators, we are also compelled to make recommendations based on the facts that are in front of us, regardless of whatever principle we established in the beginning. You know, we've had a vacancy at the highway department for 2 years that's been in the budget, we didn't fill it. We advertised, we got applicants, they weren't what we needed. They didn't have the necessary skills, didn't have the necessary track record. One guy only stayed for 2 weeks, it wasn't for him. You know, another guy got an offer from the building next door, the fire department, went over there, because he's a lifelong volunteer firefighter from another place, and there's a hugely good fit over there, but left us without a mechanic. So that position's been vacant for a couple of years. In making the recommendations this year to save money, as you know, I've transitioned a position from full-time to part-time, so that takes away the benefit quotient as well as that portion of the salary. We're very aggressive about trying to find ways to keep the personnel count down, which is not at all the modus operandi of the school department, where we gave them money to hire some people to do some things to be more competitive. So as a general notion, every budget that's been passed with the override has had new positions in it. They just weren't on the town side.
Right, well, I can't control that.
You can't control that, but it, you know, that is what has happened. So, but the timing issue is important to me, because I don't want, if anybody ever accused me of sneaking something through or being too late with it, I would just withdraw it rather than accept that criticism. But we had to look at exactly what was going on, the situation we were in, and try to make the best match with the pieces that were available on the board. So, and I'll let the chief make the rest of his case on the merits, and you guys can debate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other old business? Any new business?
I would just say I was contacted by a member of the town, and they're having difficulty, a citizen of the town, being able to watch and hear. Basically, the camera gets stuck, and they can see us and hear, but they're having difficulty seeing the people that are here remotely. So I'm not techie enough, but I'm looking at the chairman to say whether that's on their end, our end, or somewhere in the middle, but I did just want to pass it on to the board, that all that person was able to view was one little box, and I think it had Kevin's name on it, so that may have been the problem right there.
That's probably it.
Well, so, Mr. Chairman, may I do know the answer. The last meeting in particular was a streaming issue with YouTube.
Okay.
So the in-house video was fine, and the in-house audio stream was fine. So the rebroadcast of the meeting should be good.
Okay.
That is going to be an issue. So how much bandwidth are we using over at YouTube, and are they keeping up with us? And that's going to be true whether it's via Zoom or whatever platform we're putting into it. As for the way all the systems work, and I spent the whole day today on Zoom calls, so I'm just as frustrated with Zoom as anybody else is. But if your mic is hot and there's any noise, the screen is going to key to your screen. And since a lot of this is by the graces of Kevin's involvement, and it's on his computer, so anything is being said that isn't somebody other than the meeting manager, it's going to be his name on that box.
Okay.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I can address what needs to happen. Like, if you've got anybody that's doing multiple streaming platforms, you actually have to reconfigure your network to do what they call multicast. So it's not cheap. There is some load balancing and traffic shaping and things that need to happen on the network side, which I don't think that we really have the funds or bandwidth to do at this particular point in time.
By network, you mean our network
Our
here?
internal network. The other part of it is that our ISP, which is Charter, won't support multicast from an end user unless you're on what they would deem an enterprise account, which we're not. We're a municipality, so they actually have our routers and peering points configured differently as well. So if we're trying to do, like, let's say we have 3 boards that are all meeting and we're on Spaces, and then he's broadcasting that over YouTube, and then we have planning board that's using Zoom, so you're going to literally choke the bandwidth out of the building. So unless you start doing multicast, to where you actually have an intelligent enough router to say, this is how I'm gonna break these apart and put them back together in a better fashion. It's the easiest way to explain it. Sorry, I got too techie.
You were getting there. My eyes started to
about to
glaze
say
over.
packets. He wanted to say
He was going to say data packets, he was. Yeah.
Then everyone would have said, English, please.
Yeah. But that's,
Summarize what he said?
No,
we don't have the power, Captain.
that-
That's the easiest way.
that's my summary.
Yeah. All right, is there? Yes.
Hey, Pat.
I think that part of the issue might be how the Avaya system is reading to the live stream. So if I'm looking at the YouTube right now, what's coming out of your Avaya system into my cable system,
Yeah.
it is showing the resource room as a tiny little square up in the right corner the whole time. So like, I just started talking, now my face is really big off screen. Hi everyone, but is there a way to reconfigure your screen on your computer to show the multi-screens differently, or is that just the way it is?
We're not getting out of here till 10.
One of the things I heard is that they thought the resource room was too small.
So the end user view is not configurable in the current release, but the next release that's coming out in the next 2 weeks, it is. So, and as it's a hosted solution, it's just they're gonna log in and it's gonna look different, unless you have an account.
Just wanted to jump in with that real quick.
Okay.
Pat, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Can you say data packet, please?
You want me to say data pack?
Yes, yeah.
Well, data packet.
Thank you. We're just having fun with Kevin, that's all.
The other reason that it doesn't work is there's too many lawyers that sit on this thing.
They suck up the bandwidth.
Do we ever?
They get very wordy. All right, is there any other new business?
That'll do it for me.
Can I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.